It is generally best to use a service account for authentication to a GCP API. In some cases, you might want to access a resource on behalf of a user. Use cases where you might want to access resource on behalf of a user include your application needing access to Google BigQuery datasets that belong to your application users, and your application needing to authenticate as a user to create projects on their behalf. You can use the OAuth 2.0 protocol to access resources on behalf of a user. Your application will request access to the resources, the user will be prompted for consent, and if consent is provided, the application can request credentials from an authorization server. The application can then use those credentials to access resources on behalf of the user. Cloud Identity Aware Proxy, IAP, controls access to your cloud applications running on GCP. IAP verifies a user's identity and determines whether that user should be allowed to access the application. IAP allows you to establish a central authorization layer for applications accessed by HTTPS. IAP lets you adopt an application-level access control model instead of relying on network-level firewalls. Applications and resources protected by Cloud IAP can only be accessed through the proxy by users and groups with the correct Cloud IAM role. When you grant a user access to an application or resource by Cloud IAP, they're subject to the fine-grained access controls implemented by the product in use without requiring a VPN. Cloud IAP performs authentication and authorization checks when a user tries to access a Cloud IAP secured resource. The slide shows how Cloud IAP works both in App Engine as well as in Computer Engine and Container Engine. To ensure the security of your applications, you should take the following precautions when using Cloud IAP. Configure your firewall and load balancer to protect against traffic that doesn't come from the serving infrastructure. Use signed headers or the App Engine Standard Environment Users API. Firebase Authentication is Google's federated authentication, supporting end-user sign-in at the client app using third-party credentials, for example, from Google or Facebook. To sign a user into your app, you first get authentication credentials from the user. These credentials can be the user's email address and password or an OAuth token from a federated identity provider. Then, you pass these credentials to the Firebase Authentication SDK. Firebase's backend services will then verify those credentials and return a response to the client. After a successful sign-in, you can access the user's basic profile information, and you can control the user's access to data stored in other Firebase products. You can also use the provided authentication token to verify the identity of users in your own backend services. Authentication, except for phone authentication, is free, regardless of your Firebase pricing plan. Phone authentication allows for 10,000 authentications a month on the Spark and Flame plans and is 1 cent per verification in the US, Canada, and India, and 6 cents per verification in all other countries on the Blaze plan. For more information on Firebase pricing, please see the resource link provided in the download section below.